What is up, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to a very special episode of the Stick-to-OleMiss podcast. I am your host, TJ Oxley, and joined, as always, by my friend, my brother, Caleb Salers. How you doing, Caleb?
Man, I'm good. What's up with you? You doing all right?
Oh, I'm good. Just got burned a little bit from my man, Ray Baker. The Edo special right there. But I tell you what, it's a fun time. This is actually the first show we've ever done, so I'm excited to really get into this, see the show grow, see us grow with the fans, and how it all is going to turn out. But today, we're going to be talking a lot about basketball with the news going on. Hopefully, we can get a baseball show out here in the next couple of days or so. But premise of it is going to be Ole Miss under interim coach a win case. Gets a solid SEC dub in basketball over LSU, 82-69 after the news of the split between the Ole Miss basketball program and Kermit Davis. And then we're going to get a little bit into the coaching search as is, where they're at, what they kind of need to be looking for, and how this whole process is going to look. So I don't know about you, Caleb, but if I'm ready, you're ready. Let's get it going.
Ready. Let's do it.
All right. So 82-69, Ole Miss gets the win over LSU. The Rebels are led by Jamin Brakefield, who goes for a double-double with 23 points, 10 rebounds. They have, with 4 Rebels scoring in double figures, and they're shooting a 55.2% from the field and 42.9% from three. Just numbers we haven't really seen this from before. And I know that you were a little bit tied up. You went to the baseball game earlier that day and then eventually ended up at the Grizzlies game. So did you get to catch any of it? Did you see anything that kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, I was nomadic yesterday. I was kind of like on a wild hair. My buddies and I were like, let's go to the baseball game and the Grizzlies game. Yeah, I caught a little bit. I mean, I was definitely keeping up with the Ole Miss game during the Grizzlies game to the point where my buddies were like, hey, we're at a game. And I'm like, I know, but I got to keep up with this too. It was good to see the team playing loose. That's my main takeaway. And Brakefield leading the team in scoring. He's been probably arguably the most productive player on the team here lately. And I love what I've seen from him, and I'm glad that he kind of got to cut loose yesterday and just play his game.
I mean, the most consistent for sure, right? Like this is a guy who's I mean, granted hasn't been giving you the amount of shots that you may want or the amount of looks, but he's been giving you consistent production, certainly kind of hovering around the 10, 12 points per game specifically. I'm not exactly sure what that number is, but I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail right on the head there when you said this team played loose.
Yeah.
And it was a game where they didn't really have anything to lose. I think it's a time where players are kind of maybe shocked a little bit. Fans are kind of, fans are probably a little bit happy, to be honest. But I mean, for the players, this is a very tough moment for them to kind of have to band together, to realize they're playing for themselves, they're playing for each other. The fans that do show up, congratulations. That's a big step, in showing your Ole Miss pride there. But I mean, this is a game where who cares? If you lose, it's kind of expected at this point. They're about to do a nationwide coaching search. So go out, do some things, try some things. And we kind of saw some of the benefits of that. They looked like they were having fun playing. I mean, it was almost like reminiscent of Houston's Phi Slamma Jamma. They were running, they were dunking. It was almost fantastic to watch.
When you heard Win Case after the game, and I'm not going to get super deep into this, but he pretty much let them, gave them carte blanche. He was talking about drawing up plays to find an alley-oop, to find a pull-up three, just stuff that you knew if they hit one of those threes or if they landed one of those alley-oops, that the team's morale would just be boosted to the nth degree during the game. And you got to see them playing selfless basketball and kind of enjoy. It was weird. It's kind of like they were enjoying playing with each other, for the team, more so than you've seen all season. And that was just, I don't know, the looseness that they played with, the way that they didn't seem tight, didn't seem like they were fearful of missing a shot, fearful of doing something wrong, more so they were excited that they got to play.
Yeah, actually, I think you brought up a really good point when you say the fearfulness of doing something wrong. It was late in the game. Ole Miss, I think, had pretty much was close to clinching the game at this point. I remember James White's coming down and he actually breaks his dude ankles with a behind the back dribble and then goes in and shoots a little floater in a situation with less than a minute left and they're 9, I'm going to guess there. And it's one of those where it's you don't take that shot, but in a situation like this, you're not going to get punished for it in the same sense that, if you're kind of in this rigid structure that most teams kind of are, they're more free. There's more freedom going on right now, and that kind of like was the embodiment of it. It was like he went in and he made this really cool, floater, and the lead's back up to over double digits again. I'm guessing I don't know what the actual difference is, but that was kind of one of the things that I just kind of noticed. Like there was no worry about making a mistake. There was no worry about screwing up with the fear that you might be going out of the game, or you might for a while it's the same thing going out of the game. But that's kind of the one of the things I noticed, and in part it helped them play a more complete game. I think this is one of the issues for this Ole Miss basketball team is they really they would play well for I don't know, 3/4 of the game, and then all of a sudden they would just kind of fall apart for a bit, or they would kind of go in that scoring drought or have those issues. And that was, kind of the reason between some wins in SEC play and some losses.
I mean, it happened all season. The team really hasn't been blown out a lot. I mean, there's been some double-digit losses here and there, but they've been competing kind of almost to the bitter end of every game. But it's kind of like followed a script. Every game, the team will battle it out, either cut the deficit in half or whatever at halftime, or have a small lead, and then in the second half kind of blow the lead but keep themselves competitive. And then in that last 5 minutes they won't be able to score at all and just play so tight, and it all just falls apart. But the team yesterday pieced it together and just kept playing. The last time you saw that was at South Carolina, where the team had a lead, developed a big lead, lost it, but then continued to fight back and fight and build on that again and played a complete game. You haven't seen that since the South Carolina game. You haven't seen the team, scoring in the last couple of minutes of the game. The Auburn game, you had a lead going into the very end of the game. And then, I'm watching the game and I have to think to myself, I know what's going to happen. I know how this is going to happen. I know what run Auburn's about to go on. And it did. It all came to fruition, and it was just refreshing last night not to see that happen.
Yeah, earlier, I'm going to say maybe a couple weeks ago, I put out an article that pretty much just said Ole Miss basketball was stuck in quicksand. Mm-hmm. The harder and harder they tried to work themselves out of a jam or work themselves into a situation where they could get some momentum going, the tougher it was.
Yeah.
And it kind of felt like last night they just played so freely that they found a way out of that, And in the process of it, they put together that whole game. And I think, when Case even said it after the game, this is a quote from him in his press conference. In basketball, you've got to play for 2 halves. For a long time, we played all the way up to 36 minutes or 37 minutes, and then we let up. Tonight, we finally put 2 halves together. And I mean, it's for the fans who watched it, for the media who's watched it, for the players themselves, they know it. Some of those 3-minute stretches have cost them games dearly. And I think we got to give a lot of credit to Wynn himself. I think it's a tough situation to be in, to try to have to finish things out, to try to gather the morale of everybody and keep everybody kind of, focused in, especially with this game being within a 48-hour time period of the news breaking. I mean, That's incredibly tough situation. It speaks to the character that he has. It speaks to the character that the players have. He was very calm on the sideline. He was very cool, collected. You see him smile a little bit, so he was having fun with it. He didn't feel, any pressure to be there. He didn't feel anything like he was just trying to make things right the ship or continue to the path that they were on, so to speak. It was just go out there, do your thing. If you're going to go for it, go for it.
He also, in the press conference, another thing he said too was he never really soaked in the moment. Oh wow, I'm an SEC head coach today. He's like, no, it wasn't about me. It was about the players. It was about the kids. I just wanted them to have fun. I wanted them to win a basketball game. That's what it was all about. And it was really neat to see that kind of come to fruition, because this man, it is a big opportunity for him. He's getting to do something he's literally never done before, and it wasn't about him at all. He never made it about himself, never made it about, what he was going to do, what his future would hold. It was all about the players, all about the kids, and it was nice to see that pay dividends.
Yeah, another quote from the press conference is character matters, and our team has a lot of character. That is the reason why this team never gave up. Throughout all the heartaches, injuries, and all those things, they stayed together. They continued to fight, and this is the result of it tonight. Just a pro level response from Wynn right there.
Absolutely.
Just pro level. And I think, going back to kind of the whole, really the theme of the game last night was just the freedom they were playing with, the fun they were having. And I think you can kind of break down some plays where you saw Brakefield had a very impressive Euro step that was something that we had never seen him do before. He went for it. TJ Caldwell had a turnaround jumper in the mid range that I think I put a tweet out as just bookmark this, because I was this is something you have not seen him do. And if this is something he can do, this is him taking a step in the right direction going forward. James White looked very comfortable last night. I think he was a kid that kind of, was always kind of worried about whether he would make a mistake or not and letting that kind of maybe affect his play a little bit. So to see him out there play loose, get some time, not worry about if he makes a mistake or not, he felt really, calm. Miles Burns has put together another really good performance within his game.
I like the caveat there. No, but you know what I mean? And Burns has settled into his role. And that was one of the things earlier in the season. It was like, will he settle into his role and will he figure out who he is on the team? And he has. And it's good to see him doing exactly what he was brought on the team to do.
Yeah. No, I have pretty much loved Miles Burns' games down the stretch here. I think like you said, he's really found his role. He's really starting to play within himself, and he doesn't try to do anything or force the issue. As pretty much, I think, kind of earlier in the season, he would take some of those outside shots. He would attack more. I think he kind of knows how he can help the team win. And this guy is a winner. This is a guy who's a NAIA national champion. So for him to kind of figure it out down the stretch here, it's kind of cool. Hopefully we can see this team kind of bring some more momentum along. Hopefully they can put together a competitive stretch down the end. I think it would be fun for everybody to see. I think it's worth it I think the players honestly deserve it. They have worked so hard. This is actually a really talented roster, and you kind of saw a little bit of that happen, last night. I do want to bring up one thing, and this is kind of before we get into the actual coaching hire that's coming up. Let's give a little bit of credit to Kermit Davis. Let's give tons of credit for what's going on. Took the news, pretty well. Went to Twitter the next day. Was congratulating the team on their win. You see him retweeting Ole Miss accounts,
liking your tweets,
liking my tweets. You're gonna go shout out a tweet from my guy Tyler Comas. Former Rebel Walk guy, now with 247.
Oh yeah.
Man, seeing this from on top of this, Kermit Davis also called recruits, telling them how special of a place Ole Miss after he was let go, according to Win-Case last night.
That's cool.
That's a class act. And we're not even talking about the stuff that he even does that's not related to basketball.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's awesome.
He is a class act. Best of the best. I will celebrate his time here. I know things didn't exactly go his way. I admire him for sticking to his guns, so to speak. Continue to do things his way, but I think he's a really good dude.
He did the Frank Sinatra, man. He did it his way, but no, Kermit Davis. He did again. We talked about this privately. We've talked about this before. He did everything right except win ball games when he needed to. Everything else he knocked out of the park. Everything else. He was a good recruiter, best recruiter in Ole Miss basketball history. Everything outside of basketball. Great community member. Every event he had to show up to, everybody went away just loving this man, loving who he was. Selfless, gave his time, effort, energy, devoted everything to Ole Miss. He didn't want to see the program take this turn. He didn't want to see the team take this turn. But, in a league that grew more offensive, he doubled down on the defense. He gambled, and essentially it just didn't go in his favor. But that doesn't mean we should just neglect who he was as a person. Not like he died or anything, but, neglect who he was for the university or what he did and all the work he put into being a good role model, being a good example, being a good member for Ole Miss basketball and Ole Miss athletics as a whole.
Yeah, I think this is kind of something where I know, in the short term, I think fans are going to have their opinions, and that's just because the success or the lack of success that the program has had. And I really hope that as we can kind of grow older with it and as time goes on, that people can really just kind of celebrate Kermit Davis for who he was with the program and the act that he put on for everybody. He was a tremendous individual. I have a lot of respect for him as a person, respect for him as a coach, but that means that's so to say we're still a little bit excited about the future, right? There's still plenty of reason for excitement for the next couple of weeks. It's going to get really interesting. Obviously, Keith Carter has a decision to make, and it's I thought it was interesting that they made the decision when they did, but that's okay. So kind of looking forward, what do you think this process is going to look like, Caleb?
Yeah, I was kind of shocked that Kermit was let go when he was. I didn't expect to get that notification on Friday. I wasn't expecting to write an article about it for Super Talk. Moving forward, I think Keith Carter's going to act quickly. I think he has to act quickly. Kind of you let the guy go, but I'm not giving a timetable as to exactly when he'll make a decision because I'm not Keith Carter. Only Keith Carter knows what Keith Carter's going to do. But I think he's going to act quickly. I think there's some veteran names that people really want. People are really wanting to be Ole Miss's next head coach. I think Keith will kick the tires on those guys at the very least, and I think he'll make some phone calls and try to evaluate, which direction he wants Ole Miss to go in.
I wasn't even I woke up to a text message, and it said something, and it was just it was a rumor that kind of went out, and it was just something about the internal processes within Ole Miss and how they came to the decision, and I was just like, what's happening? I had just for those of you who don't know, this was not how this weekend was supposed to go for me.
No.
I was supposed to go visit some friends in St. Louis. I was supposed to go have a good time. I was going to take a weekend off to go enjoy it. And I woke up early Friday morning. My flight had been delayed and everything had been changed. So I just realized, I was like, okay, at this point, it was 6 a.m. And I was like, I'm not going to get to go. I had to cancel my entire flight. So I just went back to bed for a little bit, woke up, and then I saw the text message, and it was just like, what is this all about? And then immediately I just kind of, went to Twitter first, and just it's just flooding through the comments. Ole Miss has made a decision to part ways with Kermit Davis. And I was just like, what? I slept through this? This is something I need to be ready for this.
I'm texting you about it. Yeah.
This is the worst timing for it,
I was actually shocked that I didn't get a text message from you when it initially happened. I was expecting you to be all over it. I'm like, how am I getting this before you? But I do get some things before you sometimes because of my sources, but it's not a source war.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely interesting that they made a decision in the season. I know that was something that Keith Carter kind of is normally against. I'm sure there was some pressure from a lot of different places coming in order to make that happen. But whenever that does happen, it does mean that the media does get to talk about it a little bit. So with the job coming open, we do kind of hear a little bit about some people who may be interested, and some names are going to be thrown out, whether they're through national media, local media, whether they're through random people on message boards. So I kind of wanted to go through, and I'm going to talk about the 5 names that I, have seen the most. And I'm, for the most part, 4 of these are guys that I think have been linked through national media, as well as some local media members. And then one of them, I think, is more of the fan-based one who we know has interest in the job, but the question kind of relies, does Ole Miss have interest in
the job have interest in him?
Yeah. So going through Chris Beard, formerly at the University of Texas. Don't really need to go into who he is or what he is. Everybody should know who he is. Took Texas Tech to a national championship game only a short couple years ago. Had University of Texas within the top 5 this season before getting let go. Dusty May out of Florida Atlantic, really kind of the strong connection to Ole Miss through serving under Mike White, and also has former Ole Miss star Todd Abernathy as an assistant coach. Grant McCaslin of North Texas, and Chris Holtman of Ohio State rounds out the 4 that I think have nationally just kind of been linked so far from what I names that have been heard from some more reputable sources. Will Wade is the other one. I think he's the one that I was kind of referring to as we know he has interest. Does Ole Miss have the interest? So what do you think about those names? Just kind of first thought.
Well, it's hot board season, and everybody loves the hot board. Yeah.
And no one really knows. No one really knows at this point,
No. Here's one of those searches where normally you kind of have a little idea of where things are going to go. Like with the Lane Kiffin hire, Keith Carter did kind of the unthinkable, but people knew that Kiffin was on the radar. It was like Norvell Kiffin. Well, Norvell's at Florida State. He's not coming to Ole Miss, so Kiffin's the next guy. I genuinely don't know where this is going to go. I have no clue at all. I like to think that Holtman is kind of the first guy that, depending on what happens with him at Ohio State, depending on where that goes, that one seems to be kind of the safest bet if you were a betting guy, that I could see where Keith would have real interest there, because if he did at Ole Miss half of what he did at Ohio State, he'd be the winningest, best coach in Ole Miss history. But Chris Beard is one of those things. He has a lot of obstacles to hurdle, and you kick the tires on him. I mean, you know what the product on the court's going to be like, but you don't know how he's going to be able to recruit with all this looming over him, how he's going to pull Mama to the side. Grant McCaslin, Dusty May, both mid-major guys who have had a lot of success. I mean, Dusty May is most likely going to be in the tournament this year with the connections to Mike White. Todd Abernathy is the assistant. He's
probably going to be one of Dusty or Grant. One of them is going to represent that conference.
Yeah, right. Either or, absolutely. From my perspective, those two would make sense for the program. But from a fan, like thinking about other fans, people who I've talked to that are like, no, we do not need to go the mid-major route, do that again. I don't know what fan enthusiasm would be if Ole Miss hired a McCaslin or if Ole Miss hired a May. But
fans always want the big name, though. You know that they always want the biggest name they can get. They want the most enticing name. Let's say that.
Yes, and I think the notion that like, I'm not going to support the team anymore if they hire one of these guys is rooted in ignorance. Like you have to at least give the guy a chance. I mean, no one thought Hugh Freeze was going to be as good as he was initially. We know how that ended, but you know what I mean. But yeah, I think every one of those names you mentioned is a viable candidate, even to the extent of Will Wade being a fan-renowned candidate who has a lot of interest in the job. I mean, depending on his show calls, depending on what happens, I mean, if Ole Miss is willing to dedicate the time to it, I mean, that is a real candidate, viable candidate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, would be definitely an upgrade from what you just had.
That, early on, we've seen such a wide net of potential candidates. I think this is something where I think fans really just they want to see these big names be available and for Ole Miss to be interested in, to Ole Miss potentially to pursue. But I think it's good for them to go ahead and take a look at and just figure out who the best coach is going to be, who the best person is going to be, who has the vision for the program. I'm not going to discredit any of these kind of like mid-major coaches because of where they are. I mean, every coach starts somewhere, and just because a guy, isn't at the top level yet does not mean he's not a top level coach. Well, he just hasn't worked his way there yet. And Ole Miss could be the one that could kind of jump onto one of those guys, and catch them before they become this top level coach. But there's also these guys out here like, Chris Holtmann, who has had a ton of success. Yeah. Chris Beard, if he, if the vetting process goes okay, has had an incredible amount of success. Will Wade also has had a good amount of success depending on his show cause and what the vetting process is with him. So I think it's very good that we're seeing all this kind of come together. But now I kind of want to take a moment and kind of shift a little bit, just to kind of go through some of the national media members. What have they said? What have they seen? And then we'll kind of break down what we hear from that. Okay. So we're going to start it off with Jeff Goodman of Stadium. Put this out in a tweet, I think around February 24th. So as soon as the job became available, 2 names that are likely to be mentioned for the Ole Miss opening per source: Chris Beard and Dusty May. Obviously, Beard will have to clear some significant hurdles, even though the case was dropped. And Dusty May coached with Mike White, who played with Ole Miss athletic director Keith Carter in Oxford. Pretty straightforward thing there. It was pretty kind of on the reactionary side, but I do think it kind of, for them to hear names like this pretty early on, and I do kind of trust sort of the national media members and who they hear in these style situations. They don't put these out just to put these out.
No, especially Jeff Goodman, who's one of the most respected names in college basketball reporting. And usually when Jeff Goodman's on a scoop, he knows what he's talking about. He's not making things up out of thin air. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's interesting, that Keith would. I mean, I can see that he could potentially be pursuing Chris Beard and a potential for hiring a Chris Beard, one of those guys. But you also have to consider the baggage that comes with a Chris Beard. You have to consider the obstacles that he would have to overcome, the hurdles. Mm-hmm. So Goodman said. And then would it be safer to hire a Dusty May, who's kind of proved himself, definitely as a head coach, has built one of the worst programs in college basketball into a winning product. But it is interesting to hear national media mention both of those names. It's like, yeah, they both have a real shot to be the head coach at Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really think like when it comes to like Chris Beard, I mean, they're obviously like the issues aren't basketball related. We know this.
No.
The issues have nothing to do with it. But what I will say is about, and I'm going to get to all 4 here eventually, but the 4 out of the 5 names that were mentioned earlier with Chris Beard, Dusty May, Grant McCaslin, and Chris Holtmann is I really love their ability to maximize on using the talent they have. I think that's going to be a key for anybody who steps into this Ole Miss position. It's not going to be just like this night and day turnaround style thing. You're going to have to kind of build up a little bit. That's just the way the SEC is. Everybody is out there recruiting very good talent, some teams to the almost elite level. So for someone like that, Chris Beard, turned around Little Rock in one season to get him to 30 wins. I think that's a huge, thing. As well as the success he had at building up Texas Tech. So I think, when you look at it from a basketball perspective, it's an exciting thing because kind of what he did at Texas Tech is kind of a similar situation to where you think Ole Miss could kind of take that same kind of path. Now, whether they, ride it all the way to the national championship, not that's a little bit different, but you can kind of see that like he's kind of been there before in that situation and that same style, same level of program.
That's lofty to think he's gonna. Hey, just take the Rebels to the.
No, I'm not saying he's going to take them to the national title.
But I didn't say you said that. I'm just saying anyone saying that.
Yeah.
Now, but
I'm just saying the fact that like you can see like what he's been able to do with a program that's kind of in a similar situation. And then obviously with Dusty May, I mean, this is a team where a couple of their better players come off the bench. They play a pretty fast pace. They play pretty efficient there. But the only thing separating them from being like a ridiculously fast-paced team, pass up a Uh-oh. Lost me for a second. Go ahead and keep going.
What was the last thing you said?
Oh, no.
How about that? No. I lost you for a second.
Okay, you lost me. Are we back? We're good?
Yeah,
all
we're
right.
good. We're good.
So I was talking about Dusty May and how like some of his talent, is willing to come off the bench and how as a team, they play fast, but they're also very smart to the point that the only thing separating them from being one of the faster teams in the NCAA is the fact that they know when to pass up a good shot for a great shot, when to know to look for a better quality shot. So two very exciting names. We're going to go to our next one here. This one, Jeff Borzello, ESPN. As mentioned in here yesterday, FAU's Dusty May is likely to be a candidate at Ole Miss, while industry sources have mentioned it as a landing spot for Chris Beard. So the two names we just talked about. Another name that could be in the mix is North Texas Grant's McCasland. Again, this is kind of coming out on the 24th, kind of like the reactionary style thing, but this is the initial. But as we say that, this isn't something that has like Keith Carter's been thinking about this decision for a while, thinking about names that could potentially be there. This isn't something that they made the decision to get rid of Kermit Davis. Now we got to go ahead and scrape together who's the best names out there. No,
let's get the search going.
They are always thinking about it. They are going to their office. They are opening up the file and they are looking at who's available.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. This was in the works long before we even knew. But and I don't even think the North Alabama loss was when not search per se, but when we should probably start looking into other guys happened. I think this has been in the works for a while now, and to think that Keith Carter is just now conducting research on these guys that's definitely not the case. But McCasland is a name that intrigues me because of the style of play. It's a lot slower. They don't score a lot of points. People talk about people have complained about Kermit's system, that the product on the court not being fun, not being offensive. Well, you'll be getting a lot of that with McCasland. However, he wins. At the end of the day, does it matter if you score 90 points or if you score 45 points? If you win, he wins. It doesn't matter.
You're going straight off my hot board with that last one there. No, it is one of those things. They focus a lot on the defensive intensity of things, and the one thing that excites me about Grant McCasland is that he knows how to get guys who fit his style, fit his culture. They don't recruit the best in the CUSA. They don't get the top names, but they get guys who kind of fall through the cracks, and they end up working out really well. When you play for a Grant McCasland style team, you're going to have to expect to put a full 40 minutes of effort into the defensive side of the ball. And that's a part of that. And part of the reason their defense is so good is because they like to chew up the clock offensively. They're going to go late into the shot clock. Now, necessarily, does that mean it's bad offense? No. I think that's the myth. I think fans are kind of sitting there thinking, oh, well, this team scores in the 50s, so they're not good offensively. We don't want another slow-paced head coach. Huh?
So that's not what that means.
No, it just means they draw it out. It's Virginia style offense. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just means they know how to work the clock, and it sets them up for defense. It sets them up for defense. In fact, two maybe 3 years ago, what is it? They were like 94th percentile overall, like in offensive efficiency.
Yeah.
And they had I probably trying to make it in the G League or over over in Europe right now.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not what you think it is. It's a fun thing to watch. They play their style, and but they're really good on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
It's just a very slowing down style. And I think for a job like Ole Miss, if you're kind of looking to kind of get some quicker results, why not? He's won. He's only had one season where he's gotten less than 20 wins.
Yeah.
And he's looking at back-to-back 25-win seasons right now.
Which is incredible.
Pretty good benchmark, if you ask me.
Yeah. Especially for a program like North Texas, who hasn't been the most successful program by any stretch of the imagination.
And he's sustained it.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been there a while.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really intriguing name. Whether he has, interest in the job or not, I don't know. But I don't think we should discount this guy because he runs a slower style of offense.
$3 million a year gets you interest in a job, though. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Last one we're going to go through. This one actually came out recently after Ohio State's latest game, which was a win, by the way. Chris Holtmann was asked about his commitment to Ohio State if/when open jobs start calling. An example, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, etc. Chris said, absolutely. I love it here. Gene and I, Gene the AD, have been very open about our plan moving forward. This comes from Connor Lemons. He's a writer for Land Grant Holy Nation. That's the Ohio State's SB Nation website. Interesting to hear that. Do we consider that coach speak, or do we take that as a grain of salt that maybe this job may not open?
That's weird. It kind of makes me think of after the SEC tournament last year when Kermit Davis was talking to the media, and he's like, I have a great AD. Keith Carter and I have a great relationship. We look forward to what we're going to do next season. Kind of speaking in future terms, Holtmann didn't really do that. He didn't really speak in future terms per se as to what is going to happen. He said, we have an idea of what our future will be, or idea of our vision, right? And he loves it there, but I don't know. If I'm reading the tea leaves, it sounds more coach speak-ish than it does like, no, we're good. I'll be here again next year. Because to me, he could have answered that in a way where he was like, no, we're dedicated to this program. Me and Gene, we're dedicated to each other. We're going to keep this thing going. We're going to keep this train going into next year. Just because we had a bump in the road this year doesn't mean this is how the program will continue to be. He didn't say any of that. He kind of left it open-ended, which leads me to believe that definitely coach speak.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, 2019-2020 season where they've been to the tournament every single year.
Yeah.
Under Chris Holtmann. They've made it to the second round 3 times, in the first round once. Going through, they finished in the AP top 23 different times. Last year being the only one they didn't. They just simply have fallen on hard times this year. Kind of like Ole Miss. They just kind of forgot how to win games. They've been close. They've been in them, but they just haven't quite been there. They currently sit a team with a 3-14 mark in Big Ten play, and it's been tough. But should that discredit you from thinking of him as a candidate? Not in the slightest. This guy is a winner. He's been a winner for a very long time, almost going back, even at Gardner-Webb, he built them up to a 21 program, took over at Butler. That was a job that had kind of fallen off a little bit. Brad Stevens was there. They had I can't think of the guy's name, but they had a coach there for 2 seasons. They kind of fell off a little bit. Holtmann came in there, re-excited them before going to Ohio State. Personally, I think he's the top 25 coach in college basketball. I think he's really good. And I think, just because they don't look good this year, the recency bias should not bother you.
But it will bother people, TJ.
I know it will. But they also have a very, very good recruiting class coming into Ohio State next year. Will that have an effect on anything? They have 3 guys in the top 50, and a certain professional son might also be involved.
That was going to be my question. Do you think Ole Miss could get Bronny James if Chris Holtmann came to Oxford?
No, we're not going to talk about that.
I'm joking. I wasn't going to go there. I'm joking.
No, we're not even going to bother with that. We're not even going to bother.
Bronny to the SIP.
I will say though, anybody that does come into Ole Miss, they know what their plan is going to be. The flight path, if you want to call it. They need to come in, they need to get their staff together, and they need to immediately start building relationships with the students and, well, I'm not going to say students, but the current
existing roster,
the current roster, and then the recruiting class coming in as well.
Oh, they're going to have to recruit. The first people that the new coach is going to have to recruit is going to have to be Matthew Morrell, TJ Caldwell, Amari Abram, Jamin Brakefield.
All those guys. You got to call them. Yeah. It's going in there, kind of showing that, hey, I believe in you. I know who you are. I think you can be really special. Let me show you why.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right, Caleb. I think this has been a pretty good, solid first episode. What do you think?
I think so, man. Looking forward to more.
All right. Go ahead and tell the people where they can find you.
Find me on Twitter at Caleb Salers ST. Find me online at supertalk.fm. I'm with Supertalk News. So for all of your news in Mississippi, find us online at supertalk.fm, on Facebook, on Twitter at Supertalk News.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's my man right there. Go ahead. Go give him a follow on Twitter. I want this to be known that if we're doing this show, this is a show for you all. If you are watching this, we want you to be just as possible. So go ahead. Whether you follow Caleb, whether you follow me on Twitter, go ahead, shoot us a DM, ask us a question. Maybe this is something we can address on the show. Get a little mailbag action going for you all. Really love doing this for you all. It's a lot of fun, kind of watching this whole thing play out and kind of being a part of it and just kind of broadcasting more information to you.
I'm trying to work on TJ. I'm trying to get him to say y'all. He will not say y'all. I'm trying to get him to embrace the Southern culture, man. We're doing this show for y'all.
You don't think they didn't say y'all growing up in West Virginia?
You don't. So.
Yeah, I was trying not to be like the part of the rest of West Virginia.
Well, be like, come on, man. We're doing the show for y'all.
Maybe one day. Maybe one day. For now, it's going to be you all. As for me, I'm the director of basketball content over at the Rebel Walk. Go ahead and follow the Rebel Walk for plenty of other opportunities, whether you like to hear in baseball, football, incredible baseball show going on with Austin, Chris, and Nick at the moment. Give us a follow if you want to see anything football, anything basketball, women's basketball. We got all your content, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And lastly, go visit therebelwalk.com. And while you're here, if you're watching this through YouTube, go ahead, give the Rebel Walk a subscribe. Be ready for more content to come out. I think that's it.
All right.
All right. Have a good one, y'all.